Hello and welcome, dear listeners. If you're enjoying these stories, I did really appreciate a quick like or even a subscribe. It helps more than you know. I'm always curious where you all are listening from. So drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. You awaken slowly as if drifting between two worlds. For a moment you are unsure of where you are. The air feels heavy, dry and unfamiliar. The faint creak of old wood surrounds you, and when your eyes open, you find yourself in a small, dimly lit cabin. This is not your bed at home, nor the safe, modern world you know. You have just awoken in the American Wild West of the 1870s. The first thing you notice is the smells. It is not the crisp, clean air of nature you might have imagined from paintings or movies. Instead, there is a pungent mixture of smoke, damp straw, animal odors, and the unmistakable sharpness of human sweat that has gone unwashed for far too long. In this world, bathing is a rare luxury. The people here do not spend their days worrying about cleanliness. They are too busy worrying about survival. You shift slightly on the bed and realize that bed is a generous word. Beneath you is a straw-filled mattress, lumpy and uneven. Each movement releases a faint crunching sound, as though dried stalks are breaking under your weight. A sharp itch spreads across your skins, and you begin to understand why. Bedbugs, fleas, and lice are common companions in this time and place. They live in the straws, in the seams of blankets, in the folds of clothes. For frontier families, this is simply normal life. For you, it is an uncomfortable reminder that personal comfort was not a priority in the Wild West. You push yourself upright, and your body protests immediately. There is a dull ache in your shoulders and legs, as though you have been working with heavy tools all day. This is no accident. In the 1870s, life is built on labor, relentless, physical, exhausting labor. From the moment the sun rises until the moment it sets, the body is used like a tool, worn down by the demands of farming, mining, ranching, or simply keeping a household alive. There are no weekends, no days of rest, and certainly no modern conveniences to ease the strains. Even the young feel old here, and the old often do not live long enough to enjoy their age. As your eyes adjust to the dim lights, you notice the cracks in the wooden walls. Thin beams of morning sunlight cut through, but they also reveal the cold that lingers in the rooms. If this is winter, the air is biting, sharp enough to sting your lungs when you inhale. Your cabin offers little insulation, and the small fireplace in the corner has burned out overnight. If it is summer, the opposite is true. The cabin becomes an oven, trapping the heat of the day and leaving you drenched in sweat even before you rise. In either case, comfort is elusive. The frontier does not cater to human needs. It forces humans to adapt, endure, and survive. You look down at the clothing folded beside you. Rough canvas trousers and a coarse cotton shirt for men, or heavy layers of corsets, petticoats, and long dresses for women. There are no soft fabrics, no light pajamas, no freshly laundered outfits. Clothing here is designed to last, not to please. It rubs against your skin, stiff and scratchy, and it is rarely washed. Soap is a scarce commodity, and water even scarcer. Most people own only 1 or 2 sets of clothing, and they wear them until they are threadbare, patched, and worn thin. Your stomach growls softly, reminding you that hunger is never far away. Breakfast will not be a lavish meal. On the frontier, beans, biscuits, and perhaps a cup of bitter coffee make up the morning table. Fresh fruit is a seasonal luxury, and vegetables are rare unless you grow them yourself. Meat is eaten when available, but is often salted, smoked, or spoiled. Food safety is an unfamiliar concept here, and many settlers endure stomach illnesses as a constant part of life. Even coffee, a staple of frontier mornings, is boiled until it is harsh, bitter, and nearly unrecognizable to modern taste. Sometimes, eggshells or salt are added to cut the acidity. You will drink it anyway, because the caffeine is precious and necessary to face the long day ahead. Before you can leave your cabins, you are reminded of yet another daily ritual. You must check your boots. Out here, small creatures often seek shelter at night, scorpions, spiders, and even snakes. Settlers shake their boots each morning, a habit born from painful, sometimes deadly encounters. A single careless step could mean a venomous bite, with no doctor nearby to help. The simple act of dressing becomes an act of caution, a reminder that danger is always near. You step outside and the vastness of the frontier greets you. The land stretches in all directions, untamed and unforgiving. The sky above is enormous, a dome of endless blue or shifting clouds. For a moment it is breathtaking. But beauty here is deceptive. The same land that offers stunning views also offers constant threats. Weather can change without warning. A clear morning sky can give way to a sudden storm, a blizzard, or a searing heat wave. Out here, the land is always in charge, and the people who live upon it are simply trying to endure. The air carries with it another reminder of life in this place. The smell of animals. Horses, oxen, cattle, and pigs are everywhere, and their presence is inescapable. Waste lines the roads, gathers near cabins and seeps into the earth. Flies buzz constantly, a background hum that never leaves. Disease lingers in these conditions, spreading quickly through small communities where sanitation is barely understood. You take a deep breath and feel the reality settle in. The Wild West is not the romantic land of cowboys and showdowns you might have imagined. It is rough, harsh, and unrelenting. Even the act of waking up and stepping outside requires resilience. This is just the beginning of your day in the 1870s frontier. Ahead lies hunger, labor, risk, and exhaustion. For now, though, you pause and let yourself take in the view. The land is vast, and the challenges are endless, and your survival, as you will soon learn, is far from guaranteed. The first light of morning creeps through the cracks in your cabin walls. It isn't the warmth, golden sunlight that spills through modern windows, filtered by curtains and softened by glass. Instead, it is thin and harsh, cutting across the room in slivers, illuminating the dust that hangs in the air. Each particle drifts slowly, suspended in the stillness, as if time itself is reluctant to begin another day on the frontier. You lie still for a moment, reluctant to move. The straw mattress beneath you offers no comfort, only a reminder of the hard realities of life here. The straw is lumpy, uneven, and alive with small, unwelcome companions. Bedbugs, fleas, and lice thrive in these conditions, and they do not spare you simply because you are new to this place. They bite and itch, leaving behind faint trails of irritation across your skin. The blanket covering you is coarse and heavy, its rough fibers scratching as much as they warm. Comfort is not a concept that exists easily in this world. When you finally sit up, your body resists. Muscles ache as though they've already been worked to exhaustion, though the day has not yet begun. This is the reality of frontier life, aches and pains that begin early and never fully leave. Even the young are weathered here. The constant bending, lifting, hauling, and chopping wears the body down year by year, until a person in their 30s carries themselves like someone far older. Arthritis, bent spines, and permanent injuries are as common as sunrise. You stretch, and the motion feels less like loosening muscles and more like coaxing a reluctant body to obey. The air inside the cabin is cold. In winter, the inside temperature might fall below freezing, the walls offering little resistance to the biting wind. If it is summer, the air is already stifling, thick with heat and humidity that makes it hard to breathe. The small fireplace in the corner is long extinguished, its ashes cold and grey. Firewood is precious and few waste it through the night. To survive winter nights, settlers pile on blankets, huddle together, or simply endure the cold until morning. In the summer, there is no relief. Shade is limited, breeze is uncertain, and the heavy clothes worn in this era trap the heat against the skin. You glance at your surroundings. The cabin is small, its walls roughly hewn from logs or sod, depending on where you've settled. The roof is uneven, patched with whatever material was available, shingles, bark, or even layers of earth. Inside, space is limited. A table built from raw planks sits to one side, its surface scarred with knife marks from years of use. A few chairs, each creaking under their own weight, rest nearby. The shelves are sparse, holding perhaps a tin cup, a plate, or a battered cooking pot. Tools lean in the corner, worn from constant use, their wooden handles smooth from countless hands. There is no clutter, no decorations, no excess. Every object here has a purpose, and most have been repaired more than once to extend their usefulness. The smell is another reminder of where you are. Smoke from the fireplace lingers in the wood, mingling with the odor of sweat and animals. Leather, damp clothing, and stale food leave their own scents behind, and without ventilation or modern cleaning supplies, they hang heavy in the air. Outside, the smell of livestock drifts in, horses, cattle, pigs, all of them essential for survival, yet each adding to the overwhelming mixture that defines life in the West. You move toward the small basin that serves as your wash stations. A pitcher of water sits beside it, collected from a nearby stream or well. The water is cloudy, carrying with it the faint taste of earth and minerals. Bathing is not a daily ritual here. Water is too valuable, too scarce, to be used for something as luxurious as washing the body. Settlers often go weeks or months without a proper bath, especially during harsh winters. Instead, they wipe their faces and hands with a damp cloth, conserving every drop. Full baths are reserved for rare occasions, often taken in rivers or shared within families. The idea of modern hygiene, showers, soaps, clean clothes, belongs to another world entirely. Clothing is simple, practical, and uncomfortable. Men wear rough canvas or denim trousers, held up with suspenders paired with cotton or wool shirts. The fabric is stiff, heavy, and often chafes the skins. Women face even greater discomfort. Layers of garments are expected: chemises, corsets, petticoats, and long dresses that drag in the dirt. These layers are worn regardless of temperature, meaning women endure both sweltering heat and biting cold with little reprieves. Clothes are rarely washed, since soap is expensive and water precious. Stains, sweat, and dirt accumulates, creating garments that are stiff and scratchy. You pull yours on, feeling how foreign and unyielding they are against your skins. Breakfast is simple, repetitive, and far from satisfying. A pot of beans sits near the hearth, prepared the night before. Hard biscuits, nearly as tough as the wood they were baked on, accompany them. If you are lucky, there may be coffee, boiled until it is bitter and harsh, its grounds settling at the bottom of the cup. Sometimes, crushed eggshells or even salt are added to make it drinkable. Fresh fruit or vegetables are rare, available only during certain seasons. Meat, when present, is preserved with salt or smoked. Its flavor as sharp as its texture is tough. The monotony of this diet leaves settlers malnourished, often deficient in essential vitamins. Scurvy, with its bleeding gums and falling teeth, is not uncommon. But in this moment, as your stomach growls, you eat what is offered without complaint. Survival leaves little room for choice. As you finish eating, you prepare to face the day. The cabin door creaks as you push it open, and sunlight floods in. You pause for a moment, taking a slow breath, bracing yourself. The world outside is vast, wild, and indifferent. Every step beyond this cabin brings both opportunity and risk. Your body is tired, your surroundings harsh, and your resources limited. Yet, like every settler before you, you rise to meet the day. In this world, there is no time to linger, no luxury of ease. Life in the Wild West begins with discomfort, and from there, it only grows harder. Still, as you stand in the doorway of your cabin, staring out at the endless horizon, there is a quiet strength in the act of continuing. For the people of this time, survival is not guaranteed, but it is pursued, day after day, dawn after dawn. And so, with wary steps and a cautious heart, you begin your journey into the unforgiving world beyond your door. The morning stretches onwards, and as you settle into your routine, another truth about life in the Wild West becomes painfully clear: hygiene is almost non-existent. In your modern world, the act of washing up, brushing teeth, and slipping into clean clothes is so automatic it feels ordinary. But here, In the 1870s frontier, such rituals belong to a life of privilege and luxury, not to survival. Water itself is precious. To fetch it requires effort. Walking to a creek, hauling it from a well, or collecting it in barrels during rainstorms. Each bucket is heavy, sloshing and spilling as it is carried back to the cabin. Because of this, water is not wasted. Every drop is guarded, used first for drinking, cooking or feeding animals. Washing the body comes last, if at all. A full bath is something rare, often occurring once a month, or even less. Families might share the same tub of water, each person stepping in after the other, until the liquid is murky and unrecognizable. For those on the frontier, this is not seen as unpleasant, it is simply life. You glance at the small basin beside your bed. This is your wash station. Inside, a thin layer of water ripples, collected the night before. A rag rests at the edge. It's worn thin from years of use. With it, you wet your face and hands, wiping away the dust that gathered overnight. The water is cold, almost shocking, and carries with it the faint earthy taste of the stream. It does not cleanse in the way you are used to, it simply refreshes. The smell of smoke, sweat, and leather still clings to you, but here, that is normal. Everyone smells the same. Bathhouses exist in larger towns, but they are not common. Travelers who pass through might pay for the luxury of a hot soak, usually in a wooden tub filled from a stove-heated barrel. But these baths are not pristine either. The water is often reused between customers, and soap is a rare commodity. True cleanliness, the kind you imagine when picturing a long shower with scented soaps, does not exist here. Instead, the frontier smells of people, animals, and wood smoke, a constant mixture that clings to everything and everyone. Your clothing adds another layer of discomfort. The shirt on your back is stiff with sweat and dirt from the day before. It was not washed overnight, nor will it be washed today. Most settlers owned only 2 sets of clothes, one for working and one for Sunday bests. The work clothes were worn daily until they were patched, frayed, and nearly falling apart. Washing them too often risked wearing them out faster, and soap was too expensive to waste on frequent launderings. Women faced the added burden of long, layered dresses, corsets, and undergarments which trapped sweat and dust, making each summer day an ordeal. The constant rubbing of stiff fabrics left behind sores and rashes, endured silently. Dental care is even worse. There are no toothbrushes as you know them, no minty paste, no floss. People sometimes chew on twigs, rubbing them across their teeth to scrape away the worst of the buildup. Baking soda, if available, might be used as a powder, but for most, teeth rot quickly, yellowing and aching until extraction is the only answer. Dentists exist, but their tools are crude, their methods painful, and anesthesia is rare. A bad toothache here is not just an inconvenience, it can lead to deadly infections. To live on the frontier is to live with the constant threat of pain. Even hair care is a struggle. Baths are too rare for regular washings, so hair becomes oily and tangled. Lice are common companions, thriving in the absence of soap and water. Combs are used daily, not for styles, but for necessity, an attempt to remove what infestations they can. Women often braid their hair tightly, both to keep it out of the way and to slow the spread of pests. Men keep theirs short when possible, though barbers are not always nearby. Beards and mustaches are rarely trimmed to perfection. Instead, they grow rugged, tangled, and dusty from the trails. The smell of the town reflects all of this. As you walk through its streets, every passerby carries the same pungent mixture of sweat, dirt, leather, and smoke. The animals add their own contribution. Horses tied outside saloons, cattle driven through muddy streets, pigs rooting near wooden fences. The air is thick with odors, a constant reminder that this world does not care for comfort. For the settlers, the smell fades into the background of life. For you, it is overwhelming, almost suffocating. The lack of hygiene also carries invisible dangers. Diseases thrive here, spreading quickly through communities that lack proper sanitation. Dysentery, cholera, and typhoid stalk the frontiers. carried in contaminated water or unwashed hands. A simple cut can fester, dirt grinding into the wounds, infection setting in without any way to treat it. There are no antiseptics, no antibiotics. The best defense is caution, though even that often fails. To live here is to live one step away from illness. At night, the struggle does not ease. Straw mattresses are homes to lice and fleas, which feed as you sleep. Blankets hold years of sweat and smoke, impossible to wash properly. Insects slip in through the cracks in the cabin walls, seeking warmth and food. Every night you sleep not in solitudes, but in the company of countless small companions. It is not restful, but necessary, because there is no alternative. And yet, in spite of this, life continues. People endure because they must. They accept the discomfort, the smell, and the constant itch of pests. They learn to live with dirt under their fingernails and grime on their skin. The body adjusts in time, and what once seemed unbearable becomes normal. You pause, standing near the basin, feeling the cool water drying on your skin. In your world, this would not count as being clean. Here, it is enough. You take a breath and prepare for the day ahead, knowing that true comfort will never come. In the Wild West, survival comes first, and everything else, hygiene, convenience, even health, follows far behind. You rise from your cabin bed, the faint chill of the morning air wrapping around you. As your eyes adjust to the dim light slipping through cracks in the wooden walls, you glance toward the corner where your clothes rest. They are not folded neatly, nor do they feel fresh. Instead, they hang heavy with dust, smoke, and sweat from yesterday's labors. There is no such thing as a closet filled with options here. There is only what you have, and what you have is little. Men typically own no more than 2 outfits: work clothes and a set of best clothes saved for Sundays, funerals, or weddings. The work clothes are worn daily, patched and mended until the fabric becomes too weak to hold. These garments are not designed for comfort, only endurance. Denim, canvas, and coarse cotton dominate the frontier wardrobe. They are thick and scratchy, stiff against your skins, and heavy with grime. Each crease holds yesterday's sweat. Each seam carries the grit of the trails. You slip into the same trousers you wore yesterday. They are rough, the knees already frayed from kneeling in dust and dirt. The waistband pinches, where the stitching has shrunk from repeated wetting and drying, and the fabric scratches against your thighs. The shirt you pull over your shoulders is no softer. Cotton, untreated and unrefined by modern standards, rubs like sandpaper against your skins. It has been washed so rarely that it bears stains too deep to ever fade. The scent of smoke, leather, and sweat lingers within the fibers, no matter how much air touches them. For women, the task of dressing is far more demanding. Each day begins not with one garment, but with layers. First comes the chemise, then the corset, laced tightly around the ribs until breathing feels restricted. Over that lies the petticoat, sometimes several, each adding weight and bulk. Finally, a long dress falls to the ankles, its hem dragging through dust and mud wherever she walks. In summer heat, these layers trap sweat and suffocate the body, turning each step into an effort. In winter, they provide little true warmth against the sharp winds that cut through thin fabrics. The image of graceful women in flowing gowns belongs to novels and paintings. Reality is weight, restriction, and constant discomforts. Shoes offer little relief. Most are handmade, stiff leather with soles that wear down quickly against the rough ground. They pinch the toes, rub blisters into the heels, and soak through easily in rain. Socks, if available, are woolen, itchy, and often riddled with holes. Many settlers go without proper footwear altogether, especially children, their bare feet hardened against rocks and dirt out of necessity. To imagine a closet of comfortable sneakers, boots with cushioned soles, or sandals designed for breathability is to imagine a luxury far beyond this world. You glance at the hat hanging by the door, wide, brimmed and sweat-stained. It is perhaps the most important piece of clothing you own, shielding you from the relentless sun and sudden downpours. Without it, your skin would burn, your eyes would squint endlessly against the glare. The hat is not stylish, it is survival. So too is the heavy coat slung across a wooden peg. It is made of wool, coarse and scratchy, but it is the only barrier between you and the cutting cold of frontier nights. The coat smells of smoke, always, as fireside warmth is the only way to soften the brutal winters. Laundry, when it happens, is no relief. Clothes are scrubbed on washboards in cold or lukewarm water, beaten against rocks at a riverbank, or boiled in iron kettles with harsh lye soaps. The process is grueling, leaving hands raw and sore. The soap itself stings skin, and the fabric grows stiffer with every wash. Clothes do not emerge soft or fragrant, as you are accustomed to. They come out rougher, harsher, and worn thinner than before. Washing is not a weekly routine. It is an occasional necessity, done sparingly to preserve fabric that cannot easily be replaced. Children's clothing is no gentler. Most wear hand-me-downs, patched and repatched until the original fabric is barely visible. Pants are cut shorter as legs grow, shirts widened by adding mismatched scraps of cloth. Girls' dresses are often too long, hems trailing behind them until they are cut and resewn again. Comfort is never considered, only practicality and thrift matters. A growing child may spend years in garments never meant to fit properly. The result of all this is a daily life filled with friction. Fabric rubs against skin, leaving rashes and sores. Dust collects in collars and cuffs, grinding like grit paper against the body. Damp clothes cling and chafe, offering no relief from sweat or rain. There are no soft fibers, no breathable synthetics, no cushion of comforts. Every garment reminds you that you are alive, working and exposed to the elements. And yet, clothing here is not just about survival. It is also identity. A wide, brimmed hat marks a ranch hand, while a tailored suit, rare as it is, signals a man of means. A woman's corset and petticoats distinguish her from the working garments of laundresses or farmhands. The single fine dress, saved for church or town gatherings, carries immense value, a symbol of respectability and pride. In a world stripped of luxuries, clothing becomes a language, each stitch telling others who you are or who you aspire to be. By midday, the sun grows hotter and sweat gathers beneath your collar. The stiff shirt clings to your back. It seems rubbing against your shoulders with each movement. You tug at the fabric, but there is no escape. This is life here. You wear what you have, no matter the discomfort. Every settler accepts it. Comfort is not part of survival. And so, as you step out into the dusty street, you adjust your hat against the glare and move forward. The scratch of fabric, the pinch of your shoes, the weight of your coat, they are simply part of the day. You learn to endure them as everyone does, until endurance itself becomes second nature. In the Wild West, clothing is not about feeling good. It is about lasting one more day, one more season, one more year against a world that tests every fiber of both fabric and flesh. Your stomach growls softly, reminding you that it is time to think about breakfast. In your modern world, you might expect to open a refrigerator full of choices or pour a bowl of cereal in seconds. Here, in the 1870s Wild West, there is no such thing as quick convenience or variety. Food is precious, repetitive, and often unsatisfying, though it is life's most constant concern. You step toward the small wooden table in your cabin. On it rests a tin plate, a battered mug, and a sack of dried beans. Beans are the backbone of your diet out here. They are cheap, they store well, and they can be cooked slowly over a fire until they soften into something filling, if not exciting. Alongside them sits a small sack of flour, used to make hard biscuits, tough, dry, and often flavorless but portable and durable. Together, beans and biscuits form the foundation of nearly every meal you will eat on the frontier. Coffee is another staple, though what you pour into your tin mug is not the rich, fragrant brew you know today. Frontier coffee is harsh, boiled in a blackened pot until bitter, sometimes mixed with crushed eggshells or a pinch of salt to take away the edge. On bad days, When coffee beans are scarce, substitutes are brewed from roasted chicory or ground acorns, providing the illusion of warmth more than true taste. Still, the act of sipping it feels comforting. The heat filling your body against the morning chill. Fresh food is rare. Fruits and vegetables, when they can be found, are seasonal luxuries. An apple may appear once in a season, bright and crisp, but gone too quickly. A handful of wild berries might be gathered in summer. Their sweetness a momentary blessing, but more often the diet is heavy and monotonous, missing the vitamins your body craves. Diseases like scurvy, gums bleeding, teeth loosening, joints aching, are common among settlers who go too long without fresh produce. Meat provides some variety, though it is far from reliable. A rabbit caught in a snare, a chicken raised in the yard, or a side of salted pork carried from town might grace your plate. But preservation is the challenge. Without refrigeration, meat spoils quickly. To prevent waste, it is smoked or salted until it is dry, tough, and sometimes nearly inedible. The salty tang burns your tongues, but it keeps hunger away. On good days, a stew might simmer over the fire, stretching small scraps of meat with beans and flour dumplings. On bad days, you may eat nothing more than bread crusts soaked in weak broth. Butter and milk are luxuries reserved for those with cows, though even then, spoilage comes quickly. Cheese, when made, lasts longer, but it is sharp swords, and far from the smooth slices you might imagine. Eggs are more dependable if you keep hens, though each one is a treasure and rarely wasted. Honey, if found, offers rare sweetness, gathered from hives with risk of stings. Sugar is expensive and scarce, often costing far more than most families can afford. In towns, restaurants do exist, though the word carries a different meaning here. They are often nothing more than someone's kitchen, where travelers pay for whatever meal is available that day. Portions are small, flavors plain and freshness questionable. Vegetables are boiled into mush, meat overcooked until tough, bread dense and heavy. Food safety is not understood, and dishes are prepared with unwashed hands, dirty water, or spoiled ingredients. Dysentery, stomach cramps, and food poisoning are common outcomes, endured because there is no choice. On special occasions, such as holidays or the arrival of a supply wagon, meals might briefly brighten. A can of peaches, imported from far away, may appear on a table, its sweetness so rare that each slice feels like gold. A pie made with dried apples and sweetened sparingly might become the centerpiece of a gathering. These small indulgences are cherished, remembered for weeks afterwards, because they break the monotony and offer comfort against the harshness of daily survival. Alcohol, meanwhile, is never far away. In saloons, whiskey is served, but it is not the smooth, aged spirit you might imagine. More often, it is raw grain alcohols, sometimes mixed with dangerous additives like tobacco juice, pepper, or even kerosene to give it strength. Each sip burns, and more than one unlucky drinker has gone blind from a poorly mixed batch. Still, it dulls pain, numbs hunger, and makes the hardships of life a little easier to bear, at least for a while. Children fare no better in this world of scarcity. They eat the same beans, biscuits, and scraps as adults, growing lean from labor and thin diets. Candy, when found, is an extraordinary gift. Perhaps a stick of peppermint or a lump of sugar to be sucked slowly, savored until it dissolves. For many, a childhood sweet is remembered long into adulthood, not for its flavor alone, but for the sheer rarity of joy it represented. Even the simple act of eating carries challenges. Plates are tin, dented from use. Forks and knives are few. It's often shared among family members. Food is eaten quickly, before it grows cold in the drafty cabins, or is stolen by the flies that swarm in summer. There is no leisurely dining, no careful savorings. Meals are sustenance, nothing more, though their importance cannot be overstated. Without them, there is no energy to work, no strength to endure, no chance to survive. By evening, your body grows tired from labor, and hunger stirs once more. Dinner resembles breakfast, just as tomorrow's breakfast will resemble today's. beans, biscuits, a strip of salted meat if you are fortunate, and the same bitter coffee or boiled water to wash it down. The monotony presses on you, but you accept it because there is no alternatives. This is the diet of the frontier, plain and repetitive, yet capable of sustaining life through hardship. As you finish your simple meals, you lean back and let the fire's warmth soak into you. Your stomach is not satisfied in the way you might expect, but it is no longer empty. That is enough. Out here, food is not about pleasure or variety. It is about survival and survival alone. And so, with hunger quieted for now, you prepare to face another day in the Wild West. The sun has barely risen above the horizon when you step outside your cabins. The air feels cool against your face, and the land spreads wide before you, endless and quiet. For a moment, the silence feels soothing, almost peaceful. But here in the Wild West, silence does not mean safety. Beneath the stillness lurks life, unpredictable, untamed, and often dangerous. You glance down at your boots before slipping them on, remembering the warnings given by those who came before you. In the night, scorpions may have crawled inside, seeking shelter from the chill. A careless step could mean a venomous sting, miles from any medical help. Snakes, too, coil themselves in dark corners, their presence revealed only by the faint hiss or sudden strikes. On the frontier, it becomes habit to shake out your shoes each morning, a ritual of survival rather than superstition. Beyond the cabin walls, the land belongs not to you, but to the creatures that have roamed it for centuries. Wolves move silently through forests and plains, their howls echoing across the night. Though they rarely attack humans, the loss of livestock to a hungry pack could mean starvation for a family. Bears, massive and unpredictable, prowl the mountains and riverbanks. A chance encounter on a narrow trail could end in disaster. With no firearms at your side, you would be defenseless against their strength. Cougars, sleek and shadowed, stalk quietly, unseen until the moment they strike. Their eyes glow faintly in the dark, watching from rocky cliffs or dense brush. To travel alone, especially at dusk or dawn, is to invite danger from these silent hunters. Even the smallest animals carry risks. Raccoons and skunks spread disease, biting when cornered. Prairie dogs, though harmless to look at, carry fleas that transmit plague, a sickness that can sweep through settlements with devastating speed. The nights bring a different unease. As you lie on your straw-filled mattress, the sounds outside sharpen against the silence. A coyote's yip pierces the darkness, followed by the answering calls of others. The scratching of claws against wood might be no more than a raccoon climbing. But your heart quickens all the same. In a world without electricity, every shadow seems alive, every sound magnified by the absence of light. Sleep does not come easily when you know danger prowls just beyond your door. Insects, too, are a constant burden. Mosquitoes swarm in summer, their bites spreading malaria in certain regions. Fleas and lice live in clothing and bedding, biting relentlessly, carrying discomfort that never truly fades. Flies cover food, landing first on animal droppings, and then on your meal, spreading sickness unseen. A single sip of water contaminated by these pests can lead to days of fever, cramps, and weakness that leave you unable to work. A dangerous state in a place where every day's labor is needed for survival. Horses, though essential for travel and work, present their own hazards. A startled kick can break bones. A sudden fall during a ride can leave you injured far from help. Cattle, weighing hundreds of pounds, trample those who misstep around them. Even domesticated animals remain unpredictable, their sheer size and strength a constant reminder of the thin line between partner and peril. The frontier also carries the unseen threat of rabies. A single bite from a mad dog, fox, or bat can doom a person, with no cure available in this time. Stories spread of settlers or travelers losing their minds after such bites. Their deaths drawn out and agonizing. The fear of encountering a rabid animal lingers in every rustle of brush, every sudden movement in the dark, As you walk through the town later that day, you notice that even here wildlife intrudes. Horses tied to posts stamp nervously at passing dogs. Chickens scatter as children chase them through dusty streets. Stray dogs fight for scraps behind the saloon, their growls low and dangerous. A rattlesnake slithers across the path near the outhouse, and men rush to kill it before it strikes. In this world, nature is never far away. It presses against the edges of human settlements, reminding everyone that towns are small islands surrounded by an ocean of wilderness. The people of the frontier learn to live with these dangers. They keep rifles near at hand, not for dramatic duels, but for the daily necessity of protection. They hang food high and cover it tightly to keep scavengers at bay. They teach children to tread carefully, to never wander alone at dusk, to listen for the telltale sounds of snakes in the grass. Each habit, each precaution is passed down not as wisdom alone, but as survival. And yet, even with caution, accidents happen. A settler bitten by a rattlesnake may not live long enough to reach help. A child mauled by a cougar leaves behind grieving parents with no recourse. A farmer trampled by his own oxen becomes one more grave in the small plot outside town. Life here is fragile, and nature takes its toll with steady persistence. As evening approaches, you return once more to your cabins. The land around you glows with the fading light, shadows stretching long across the dirt. The air is calm now, the cries of distant birds fading into silence. For a moment the wilderness feels beautiful, endless, golden, alive. But you know better than to be lulled into ease. The beauty is real, yes, but so are the dangers that hide within it. You close the doors, latch it against the night, and settle back into your bed. The sounds of the wild press against the thin wooden walls, a reminder that here, in the West, survival is not guaranteed. It is earned every day through caution and resilience. The animals of this land were here long before you, and they will remain long after. Tonight you hope to rest undisturbed, though you know the wilderness never truly sleeps. The morning begins with a soft breeze, carrying with it the dry scent of dust and sagebrush. At first, the air feels gentle, almost pleasant, but here in the Wild West, weather shifts quickly. The sky can change its mood in the span of an hour, turning from calm blue to a canvas of dark, menacing clouds. You soon realize that survival depends not just on what you eat or where you sleep, but on how you endure the elements themselves. In summer, the sun dominates the land. Its heat is relentless, pressing down from a cloudless sky, baking the earth until it cracks. Shade is rare, water even rarer. A walk across the plains leaves you parched, your throat dry, your skin burning beneath the sun's glare. Hats with wide brims and long sleeves are not choices of fashion, but shields against the scorching rays. Still, heatstroke is common, and a single day without enough water can bring a person to the brink of collapse. Wells, when dug, often yield brackish water laced with minerals that taste bitter but must be drunk all the same. Then, without warning, a storm might rise. Dark clouds gather at the horizon, rolling in with astonishing speed. Lightning splits the sky, striking the open land where there is little to deflect it. Thunder shakes the air, echoing across the plains. Rain falls in heavy sheets, drenching everything, soaking through clothing and roofs that leak despite their careful construction. A storm out here is not simply weather. It is a force that tests your shelter, your endurance, and your spirit. Worse still are the floods that follow sudden downpours. Dry riverbeds, harmless most of the year, can swell into torrents within minutes, sweeping away wagons, livestock, and even people. Crossing streams becomes a gamble, for calm waters can turn violent in the blink of an eye. Roads wash out, trails vanish, and families are stranded, forced to wait out the deluge with little to eat or drink. Winter, on the other hand, brings its own kind of punishment. Snow falls thick across the land, covering cabins and burying fences. The cold seeps into every crack, every seam, numbing fingers and stiffening joints. Firewood becomes more precious than gold. Each log burns slowly to stretch its warmth through the endless nights. Frostbite threatens anyone who lingers outside too long, and hypothermia creeps silently into the wary and unprepared. Blizzards arrive suddenly, walls of white that blot out the world. A person caught too far from shelter may become lost within steps, swallowed by the storm's fury. Livestock freeze in the fields, their carcasses found only when the snow melts. Families huddle together indoors, listening to the wind howl as it rattles shutters and whistles through gaps in the walls. The storm does not care for human comforts. It moves on its own time, leaving behind drifts taller than a man and silence so deep it feels otherworldly. The wind itself is a constant companion on the plains. It scars the land, lifting dust into the air until it coats clothing, food and skins. Dust storms, or black blizzards, roll across the open land, darkening the sky and filling lungs with grit. Breathing becomes a struggle. Vision fades, and the world shrinks to the reach of your own hand. Afterward, the dust lingers in every corner of your homes, settling in bedding and flour sacks impossible to fully escape. At night, temperatures drop sharply. What was sweltering by day becomes chilling by evening. Travelers accustomed to warmth find themselves shivering beneath thin blankets, teeth chattering as the stars shine brightly above. There is little relief, no central heatings, no electric lights, only the flickering of a fire and the hope that it lasts until dawn. Storms are not limited to rain or snow. On the high plains, tornadoes twist down from the sky, thin at first, then growing into towering columns that tear apart everything in their path. Houses splinter, barns vanish, and fields are flattened in minutes. To see one is to feel both awe and terror, a reminder that the land itself is alive and indifferent to human survival. Drought, too, is an ever-present enemy. Weeks pass without rain, and the earth dries into a hard crust. Crops wither, animals weaken, and wells run low. Families scrape by on whatever food remains, praying for clouds that do not come. Hunger gnaws deeper with each passing day, until the land finally relents with a storm that may be too little too late. Even in good weather, challenges remain. The sun sets quickly, plunging the land into deep darkness. Without street lamps or electric light, the frontier night is absolute. Lanterns burn weakly, their glow small against the vast blackness outside. The sound of the wind, the creak of wooden beams, and the occasional distant cry of an animal remind you that you are small in this endless wilderness. The settlers of the West adapt in the only ways they can. They build homes of sod when wood is scarce, walls thick enough to insulate against the cold. They dig storm cellars to hide from tornadoes and stockpile firewood for the long winters. They mend roofs again and again, knowing each storm will test their work. They rise with the sun and sleep with the darkness, aligning themselves with nature's rhythm because resistance is impossible. You, too, must accept this rhythm each morning. You step outside to see what the day brings: burning heat, chilling wind, a sudden storm, or a rare moment of calm. Each evening, you return indoors, grateful to have endured one more cycle of the land's temper. The weather here is not a backdrop to life. It is life itself, shaping every choice, every struggle, every breath. As you settle by the fire that night, the wind still rattling softly against the cabin walls, you understand that the greatest force in the Wild West is not man or beast, but the elements. And in this place, survival depends not on conquering them, but on learning to endure. Morning sunlight slips gently through the cracks of the wooden shutters. At first glance, the day seems calm, quiet, even soothing. Yet in the Wild West, danger often lurks where you cannot see it, and few dangers are more silent, more insidious than sickness. Out here, disease is an invisible enemy, striking without warnings, spreading quickly and leaving families broken in its wake. You wake with a dull ache in your head and a scratch at the back of your throat. Today, you might dismiss such a feeling as something minor, perhaps a simple cold, soon forgotten. But on the frontier, even the mildest symptoms spark worry. A cough could linger until it becomes something far worse. A fever might mean the onset of typhoid, diphtheria, or even tuberculosis. With no modern medicine, no antibiotics, and little understanding of how germs spread, illness is a constant shadow. Frontier towns are crowded, often built hastily, and always short of sanitation. Outhouses stand too close to wells. Waste and animal manure accumulate in the streets. Flies swarm, spreading disease from person to person. In such conditions, cholera and dysentery flourish. Entire families fall ill within days. Communities weaken, and sometimes whole towns empty as sickness claims life after life. When illness strikes, settlers turn to doctors, if one is nearby. But medicine in the 1870s is not what you might expect. Many frontier doctors have little or no formal training. Some have studied briefly at small medical schools, others learned by apprenticeships, or simply declared themselves healers after reading a few manuals. Their tools are limited, their knowledge incomplete, and their treatments often as dangerous as the disease itself. Imagine visiting the local physician. His office is a dim room, cluttered with bottles and tools that gleam faintly in the lamplight. Sterilization is unknown. Instruments are reused without cleaning. A rusty saw might serve as both bone cutter and amputation blade. Bandages are rags, washed once, perhaps, but still carrying the marks of the last patient. The smell of alcohol and herbs lingers, but not from true disinfection, only as crude attempts at comfort. If your cough worsens, the doctor may prescribe bloodlettings, believing that draining some of your blood will release the sickness from your body. He might offer mercury compounds, arsenic, or other toxic substances, unaware of their slow poison. Opium and morphine are used freely, dulling pain but creating dangerous dependence. Whiskey, too, is offered as medicine, sometimes the only relief available in a world of suffering. For more serious ailments, the choices are grim. A festering wound is treated by amputations, performed with no anesthesia beyond a gulp of spirits and something to bite down on. Surgery is rare, always perilous, and survival depends less on the doctor's skill than on sheer luck. Infection, called blood poisoning, often follows. Red streaks creep along the skin, fevers rise, and too often, life ends in a haze of delirium. Childbirth is another peril of frontier life. Modern hospitals, trained midwives, sterile tools, all of these are absent. Women give birth at home, often with little help beyond family members or a neighbor. Complications are frequent, and without intervention, many end in tragedies. Mortality rates are shockingly high. 1 in 4 women in some regions may not survive childbirth. The infants, too, are fragile, their chances uncertain. The cries of a newborn are both joy and relief, for not every birth ends with such a sound. Dental care fares no better. Teeth rot from poor diets and lack of hygiene. Pain builds until it becomes unbearable. The solution is simple extractions, performed with crude pliers, no anesthetic, and plenty of courage. In the months and years that follow, many settlers lose their teeth entirely, leaving them to subsist on whatever soft food they can manage. Superstition often fills the gaps where medicine fails. Herbal remedies are passed down from families, some helpful, others useless, and a few dangerous. Poultices of tobacco leaves are pressed to wounds. Teas are brewed from bark and roots. Charms and prayers are carried close to ward off sickness. Sometimes faith and belief are the strongest medicines a family has. Isolation magnifies every illness. If you live far from town, the doctor may be a day's ride away, too far when every hour counts. A broken bone, untreated, heals crooked. A cut left to fester becomes lethal. Families learn to treat themselves, relying on whatever supplies they can gather. Every home keeps a small chest of remedies, tonics, bandages, bottles of liniment, though none are guaranteed to work. Even simple fevers can devastate. In the close quarters of a cabin, sickness spreads swiftly. A child falls ill, then the mother, then the father. Soon, no one is strong enough to care for the others. Neighbors, too, may fear to help, worried the disease will spread to their own homes. Survival becomes a matter of strength, chance, and resilience. And yet, despite the danger people endure, They find ways to live with the constant threat of illness. They boil water when they can. They share knowledge of herbs that ease pain or reduce fever. They lean on one another in times of crisis, offering what comfort they can. Slowly, towns begin to understand more about hygiene, cleanliness, and the importance of separating waste from drinking water. Progress is slow, but it is progress nonetheless. As night falls, the air in your cabin feels heavy, filled with the quiet cough of someone lying beside you. The lantern burns low, casting soft light across worried faces. The silence between coughs is tense, each one a reminder of how fragile life truly is here. You lie awake, listening, hoping, waiting for morning, when perhaps the fever will break. In the Wild Wests, survival is not only about enduring the land or the weather, it is about outlasting the sickness that sweeps through homes and towns. Every breath of clean air, every swallow of fresh water, every day without fever is a small victory. And though medicine here is crude and cures uncertain, the will to keep going is strong. You close your eyes, the lantern flickering out, and let yourself drift into uneasy rests. The night is long, but the dawn will come, and with it another chance to endure. The day begins quietly. The sun rises over the horizons, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. Birds circle lazily overhead, and the town appears calm, almost peaceful. Yet beneath that stillness, an undercurrent of danger lingers. The Wild West is not the lawless playground of duels and heroic shootouts that movies have made it out to be, but violence is never far away. Survival here is not only about braving the elements or enduring hunger. It is about navigating a society where order is fragile and justice uncertain. As you step into the street, the first thing you notice is how many people carry weapons. A revolver rests at the hip of a ranch hand. A rifle leans against the porch of the general store. Knives glint on belts tucked away but always close. Out here, weapons are tools as much as defenses. They are used for hunting, for fending off wolves and cougars, for protecting livestock from rustlers. Yet in a land where nearly everyone is armed, disputes can escalate with terrifying speed. Hollywood might have you believe that gunfights were a daily spectacle. Two men facing each other at high noon, hands poised above gleaming revolvers. The truth is far less glamorous. Such staged duels were exceedingly rare. Violence here is impulsive, messy, and usually fueled by drink, anger, or desperation. Arguments break out in saloons, cards are played too aggressively, tempers flare, and in an instant a shot rings out. No warning, no ceremony, just sudden chaos that leaves someone bleeding on the sawdust floor. The saloon, in fact, is often the center of such turmoil. These are not the polished establishments of fiction, with piano music and polished brass rails. They are rough, dimly lit rooms filled with smoke, sweat, and the harsh smell of cheap liquors. A single glass of whiskey may not even be whiskey at all. It might be raw alcohol laced with tobacco, turpentine, or even gunpowder. Strong enough to burn the throat, strong enough to fuel reckless bravado. By evening, voices rise, fists fly, and weapons are drawn. Yet violence is not confined to saloons. On the road between towns, outlaw gangs wait in ambush. Highway robbery is a real threat. Wagons halted at gunpoint, riders stripped of valuables. Trains, though symbols of progress, become tempting targets too. Their cargo and passengers easy prey in isolated stretches of track. Stagecoaches are held up, passengers forced to hand over their possessions. Their safety balanced on the mood of the men with masks and guns. In the towns themselves, law enforcement is thin. A single sheriff or marshal may be responsible for thousands of square miles, their authority stretched to the breaking point. Deputies are few, and their reach limited. Some towns attempt strict control, requiring visitors to surrender their firearms upon entry. Dodge City, Kansas, and Tombstone, Arizona, famously enforced such rules. The gunfight at the OK Corral, often mythologized, began not with a planned duel, but with a dispute over those very laws. Justice, too, is uncertain. Courts are slow, judges scarce, and jails often little more than wooden shacks. Many crimes never see trial. Instead, justice is carried out by vigilantes, neighbors who gather in anger and fear, deciding swiftly who is guilty and what punishment should follow. A horse thief might find himself hanging from a tree by nightfall, guilt or innocence barely considered. To live here is to accept that fairness is fragile, and law is often written not in books but in the hands of the majorities. Violence also comes in less visible forms. Feuds between families simmer for years, exploding suddenly in bursts of revenge. Range wars break out between cattle ranchers and farmers, disputes over land and water, leading to bloodsheds. Railroad expansion sparks conflict with settlers, with outlaws, and most tragically, with the indigenous peoples whose lands are being taken. Despite this, towns try to build a sense of order. Merchants rely on peace to keep trade alive, families seek safety for their children, and communities band together in hopes of stability. Churches rise alongside saloons, schools open their doors, and sheriffs do their best to keep the peace. But order is always delicate, always under threat, always just one argument away from collapse. For the average settler, the constant possibility of violence weighs heavily. When traveling, you keep your eyes on the horizons, scanning for movement that does not belong. At night, you check the locks on your doors, knowing they offer little true protection. You keep your rifle near the bed, not out of desire for conflict, but out of necessity. Danger does not ask permission before arriving. Still, life goes on. People adapt. They learn which saloons to avoid, which roads are safe, which neighbors can be trusted. They live with the knowledge that danger is part of the landscape, just like the weather or the land itself. Fear becomes caution, caution becomes routine, and routine allows life to continue. As the sun sets, the town quiets again. The streets empty, lanterns flicker in windows, and for a moment, peace seems to settle over the community. But the stillness is never complete. Somewhere, a shout breaks the silence. Somewhere, a weapon is drawn. Somewhere, the fragile balance tips once more. You lie down that night aware of the truth. In the Wild West, law is fragile, safety uncertain, and violence always close at hand. It is not the heroic spectacle of stories, but the harsh reality of a world still trying to tame itself. Sleep comes slowly, uneasy, as the night stretches over a land where tomorrow's peace is never guaranteed. The morning air is cool, the kind of chill that seeps into your clothes before the sun climbs high enough to warm the land. As you step outside, the horizon stretches endlessly, quiet and vast. It is a beautiful view, but beauty here is deceptive. The Wild West is not gentle, and survival demands preparation. Out here, every settler ranch hands, and traveler learns quickly that tools, and especially weapons, are not luxuries. They are the difference between life and death. On your hips, you carry a revolver, not for show, and certainly not to play the part of a gunslinger, but because it is necessary. A revolver might protect you from an outlaw on the road, or a wolf that strays too close to your cabin. It is heavy, the iron cool against your palm when you test the grip, the chambers clicking softly as you turn them. Ammunition is costly, and you cannot afford to waste a single bullet, so each shot is thought through with care. The gun is not for quick, draw duels. It is for emergencies when hesitation could mean your end. Leaning against the wall of your cabin is a rifle. Longer, heavier, but essential for hunting. With it, you can bring down deer for meat or defend your livestock from coyotes circling under cover of night. The rifle is cleaned carefully after each use, oiled and checked again and again. If it fails you in the moment of need, there will be no second chance. Every settler knows this routine, a ritual born of necessity. But weapons are only part of the story. The frontier is built on tools, simple, practical, and worn by constant use. A sturdy knife hangs from your belt, its blade dulled from cutting rope, skinning game, carving wood, and prying open crates. It serves 100 small tasks each day, so vital that you feel uneasy when it is not at hand. An axe stands ready by the door, its wooden handle polished from hours of labor. It splits firewood for warmth, builds the walls of cabins, and clears paths through the wilderness. Each swing is hard work, but without it, there would be no fire to cook your food, no shelter against the storms, no fence to guard your land. Beside the axe is a shovel, worn at the edges, the steel blade scarred from digging. It has been used to turn soil for planting, to dig ditches for drainage, and even to bury the fallen, whether animal or human. The shovel is plain, but in its plainness lies survival. In your pack, coiled neatly, is rope, strong, versatile, and endlessly useful. It can haul supplies, restrain animals, or be tied into a makeshift shelter if needed. Settlers learn knots as a second language, each one with a purpose, each one tested by time. A length of rope might save a life, pulling someone from a river or lowering them into a mine. And then there are the smaller tools, often overlooked but equally vital. A flint for striking sparks, bringing fire to life in the cold darkness. A tin cup, dented and blackened from the flames, used for drinking water or boiling coffee. A whetstone, kept close to sharpened blades dulled by endless work. Each item is carried carefully. It's protected not because of value in coin, but because of value in survival. Weapons, too, extend beyond guns and knives. A walking stick, heavy and well-balanced, doubles as a staff for defense. A whip, used to guide animals, can lash out with startling force if danger presses too close. Even simple farming tools, a pitchfork, a hoe, a hammer, can be turned to protection if the need arises. In a land where danger wears many faces, adaptability is the truest weapon of all. Yet not all tools are made of iron or wood. Knowledge itself is perhaps the most powerful tool. The knowledge of which herbs can ease a fever, which plants can poison, and which paths lead to water. The knowledge of how to track game by a broken twig, or how to read the sky for signs of a storm. Weapons may fail, tools may break, but knowledge carried in the mind endures, passed down from one settler to another, whispered by firelight as stories and lessons. Despite what stories tell, not everyone walks with a gun ready at hand. Ammunition is expensive, and a single bullet wasted is a meal lost or a defense gone. Many settlers rely instead on patience, on planning, and on tools that require no powder or shot. Traps are set for animals, snares hidden carefully along trails, nets woven for fishing. These, too, are weapons, quiet ones, waiting for their chance to spring. When traveling, you keep your tools close, each one strapped securely to a pack or saddle. On the open plains, you never know what the day will bring. Perhaps you will need the axe to clear a fallen branch from the roads, or the rifle to scare off coyotes circling too close to your horse. Perhaps you will need nothing, and the tools will feel like a burden. But here, it is better to carry weight than to be caught unprepared. At night, the tools are brought indoors, weapons cleaned and placed within reach. The axe rests near the hearth, the rifle against the wall, the knife on the table beside you. Outside, the darkness stretches far, filled with sounds you cannot always name. A coyote's distant howl, the rustle of leaves in the winds, the creak of wood settling in the cool air. You lie awake, comforted not by walls or locks, but by the tools within arm's reach, silent companions that promise, at least, a chance. In the Wild West, survival is not about heroism or daring showdowns. It is about preparation, about carrying the right tools, about treating each one with respect. The revolver at your side, the rifle by your bed, the knife at your belt. All of them are extensions of your will to endure, and as the night deepens, you close your eyes, listening to the soft crackle of the fire, knowing that tomorrow, once again, these tools will shape the line between safety and peril. The first light of dawn slips into the cabin, soft but insistent. There is no sleeping in, no lingering beneath blankets on the frontier. The Wild West does not wait for anyone, and the day's work begins as soon as the rooster crows or the first rays of sun touch the horizon. Out here, survival is measured in efforts, and every hour is claimed by labor. Your body already aches as you rise, stiff from yesterday's toil, yet there is no question of rest. The chores await. For a farmer, the morning begins in the fields. Oxen or horses must be harnessed, plows dragged across the stubborn earth, seeds sown by hand. The soil is rocky, the sun unforgiving, and every furrow turned is a struggle. Day after day, the same motions repeats, carving strength into muscles, but also carving fatigue into bones. By the time harvest comes, the labor has etched lines into faces and stooped backs into permanent shapes. If you are a ranch hand, your work looks different but no less exhausting. The cattle must be driven, branded, and watched carefully against rustlers or predators. The days stretch long, sometimes 14 or 16 hours in the saddle, the sun baking your skin as dust rises in choking clouds. Nights offer little rest, for the animals can scatter. Storms can drive them into panic, and coyotes can strike at the edges of the herd. Sleep comes in fragments, stolen in brief moments of quiet, never in comfort. For miners, the day begins below the earth, lantern in hands. You descend into narrow shafts where the air grows thick and the light dims. Pickaxes strike against stone, echoing in the confined darkness. The work is relentless, bodies bent double, arms swinging until they tremble. The dust fills your lungs, the danger of collapse hangs above you, and every spark from blasting powder could be your last. The reward is uncertain, perhaps a small vein of silver or gold, perhaps nothing at all. Yet men return each day, driven by hope or necessity, their bodies wearing down with each swing of the pick. Women, too, shoulder endless labor, though much of it remains hidden within the walls of homes. From dawn until long after sunset, tasks pile one upon the other. Water must be drawn from wells, buckets carried heavy and sloshing. Meals must be prepared over open flames. Bread kneaded and baked, beans boiled, coffee brewed. Clothing must be washed by hand, scrubbed against boards, then wrung and hung to dry. Children must be tended, fires stoked, and homes kept as clean as possible despite the ever-present dust. There are no machines to ease the work, only hands that grow calloused and weary. Even children are not spared. As soon as they can walk steadily, they are set to small tasks, feeding chickens, gathering eggs, carrying water. By adolescence, they are nearly full workers, helping in fields, herding animals, or tending younger siblings. Childhood is brief, replaced swiftly by the responsibilities of survival. Play exists, but it is a fleeting thing, squeezed between duties, overshadowed by the constant demands of the land. The hours blur into one another, broken only by brief pauses for meals that are simple and repetitive. Beans, bread, and salted meat provide fuel but little pleasure. There is no leisurely dining here, only the quick restoration of strength before work resumes. Coffee, bitter and burnt, keeps eyes open and hands moving, even when exhaustion presses down like a weight. The tools of labor are as unforgiving as the tasks. Shovels, axes, plows, and picks wear down hands, leaving them blistered and scarred. Rope burns across palms, splinters embed in skins, and backs bend under the strain of endless lifting and hauling. There are no safety measures, no protective gear, only raw effort against raw material. Injuries are common, from crushed fingers to broken bones, and each one lingers, untreated or poorly mended, becoming another burden carried into the next day. Sundays, in theory, are days of rest. Families gather in small churches or beneath the open sky, sharing hymns and prayers that offer comfort. But even then, the animals still need tending, fires still need stoking, and children still need care. True rest is rare, a luxury few can afford. Yet despite the hardship, there is a rhythm to the labor, a cadence that becomes life itself. The rising of the sun, the steady repetition of tasks, the setting of the day's burdens with nightfall. This rhythm creates a kind of quiet endurance. Work becomes not just survival but identity. A farmer is defined by his fields, a miner by the stone he carves, a rancher by the herd he guards. Every swing of the axe, every turn of the plow, every bucket lifted is a reminder of what it means to live here. By evening, bodies are spent, muscles trembling with fatigue. Calloused hands fumble as lanterns are lit, small flames flickering against the deepening darks. Families gather around meager meals, their conversations slow, their laughter quiet but genuine. The day has left them weary, yet there is pride in knowing they endured it, that they pushed back against the harshness of the land and carved another small victory. When at last you lie down, the straw mattress feels thin, but exhaustion carries you quickly towards sleep. The ache in your body is deep, yet it is the kind of ache that comes from effort, from labor that has meaning. Outside, the crickets sing, the wind stirs the grass, and the Wild West rests only for a moment, waiting for the sun to rise again. Tomorrow will bring the same demands, the same endless tasks, but tonight, for a few hours, there is quiet. The first light of dawn slips into the cabin, soft but insistent. There is no sleeping in, no lingering beneath blankets on the frontier. The Wild West does not wait for anyone, and the day's work begins as soon as the rooster crows or the first rays of sun touch the horizon. Out here, survival is measured in efforts, and every hour is claimed by labor. Your body already aches as you rise, stiff from yesterday's toil, yet there is no question of rest. The chores await. For a farmer, the morning begins in the fields. Oxen or horses must be harnessed, plows dragged across the stubborn earth, seeds sown by hand. The soil is rocky, the sun unforgiving, and every furrow turned is a struggle. Day after day, the same motions repeat, carving strength into muscles, but also carving fatigue into bones. By the time harvest comes, the labor has etched lines into faces and stooped backs into permanent shapes. If you are a ranch hand, your work looks different but no less exhausting. The cattle must be driven, branded, and watched carefully against rustlers or predators. The days stretch long, sometimes 14 or 16 hours in the saddle, the sun baking your skin as dust rises in choking clouds. Nights offer little rest, for the animals can scatter, storms can drive them into panic, and coyotes can strike at the edges of the herd. Sleep comes in fragments, stolen in brief moments of quiet, never in comfort. For miners, the day begins below the earth, lantern in hands. You descend into narrow shafts where the air grows thick and the light dims. Pickaxes strike against stone, echoing in the confined darkness. The work is relentless, bodies bent double, arms swinging until they tremble. The dust fills your lungs, the danger of collapse hangs above you, and every spark from blasting powder could be your last. The reward is uncertain, perhaps a small vein of silver or gold, perhaps nothing at all. Yet men return each day, driven by hope or necessity, their bodies wearing down with each swing of the pick. Women, too, shoulder endless labor, though much of it remains hidden within the walls of homes. From dawn until long after sunset, tasks pile one upon the other. Water must be drawn from wells, buckets carried heavy and sloshing. Meals must be prepared over open flames, bread kneaded and baked, beans boiled, coffee brewed. Clothing must be washed by hand, scrubbed against boards, then wrung and hung to dry. Children must be tended, fires stoked, and homes kept as clean as possible despite the ever-present dust. There are no machines to ease the work, only hands that grow calloused and weary. Even children are not spared. As soon as they can walk steadily, they are set to small tasks, feeding chickens, gathering eggs, carrying water. By adolescence, they are nearly full workers, helping in fields, herding animals, or tending younger siblings. Childhood is brief, replaced swiftly by the responsibilities of survival. Play exists, but it is a fleeting thing squeezed between duties, overshadowed by the constant demands of the land. The hours blur into one another, broken only by brief pauses for meals that are simple and repetitive. Beans, bread, and salted meat provide fuel but little pleasure. There is no leisurely dining here, only the quick restoration of strength before work resumes. Coffee, bitter and burnt, keeps eyes open and hands moving, even when exhaustion presses down like a weight. The tools of labor are as unforgiving as the tasks. Shovels, axes, plows, and picks wear down hands, leaving them blistered and scarred. Rope burns across palms, splinters embed in skins, and backs bend under the strain of endless lifting and hauling. There are no safety measures, no protective gear, only raw effort against raw material. Injuries are common, from crushed fingers to broken bones, and each one lingers, untreated or poorly mended, becoming another burden carried into the next day. Sundays, in theory, are days of rest. Families gather in small churches or beneath the open sky, sharing hymns and prayers that offer comfort. But even then, the animals still need tending, fires still need stoking, and children still need care. True rest is rare, a luxury few can afford. Yet despite the hardship, there is a rhythm to the labor, a cadence that becomes life itself. The rising of the sun, the steady repetition of tasks, the setting of the day's burdens with nightfall. This rhythm creates a kind of quiet endurance. Work becomes not just survival, but identity. A farmer is defined by his fields, a miner by the stone he carves, a rancher by the herd he guards. Every swing of the axe, every turn of the plow, every bucket lifted is a reminder of what it means to live here. By evening, bodies are spent, muscles trembling with fatigue. Calloused hands fumble as lanterns are lit, small flames flickering against the deepening dark. Families gather around meager meals, their conversations slow, their laughter quiet but genuine. The day has left them weary. Yet there is pride in knowing they endured it, that they pushed back against the harshness of the land and carved another small victory. When at last you lie down, the straw mattress feels thin, but exhaustion carries you quickly towards sleep. The ache in your body is deep, yet it is the kind of ache that comes from effort, from labor that has meaning. Outside, the crickets sing, the wind stirs the grass, and the Wild West rests only for a moment, waiting for the sun to rise again. Tomorrow will bring the same demands, the same endless tasks. But tonight, for a few hours, there is quiet. The morning sun creeps through the cracks in your cabin wall, and before long, the ache of hunger makes itself known. Out here on the frontier, food is not about taste or variety. It is about survival. Each meal is a quiet reminder of both the limits and the ingenuity of life in the Wild West. Your day begins, as most do, with the simplest of breakfasts. Beans simmered in a pot overnight, biscuits baked over coals, and coffee boiled until it turns bitter. There is no sugar to soften the taste, no cream to lighten it. Instead, the coffee is dark and strong, sometimes sprinkled with crushed eggshells to cut its harshness. It is not the smooth drink you know today, but the warmth and caffeine are enough to push away the morning chill. You drink slowly, savoring the heat more than the flavor. Beans are a constant companion. Cheap, filling, and easy to store, they appear on nearly every plate. Dried and carried in sacks, they can last for months, needing only water and time to cook. Biscuits, too, are a staple. Made from flour, salt, and lard, they are quick to prepare and baked in cast iron skillets or Dutch ovens buried in hot coals. Together, beans and biscuits form the foundation of countless meals, nourishing but monotonous. When meat is available, it brings variety, though rarely luxury. Salt pork is the most common, preserved heavily with salt to prevent spoilage. Its flavor is strong, often overwhelming, but it keeps well in the heat of summer and the chill of winter alike. Fresh meat, when it can be had, is roasted or stewed, though it must be eaten quickly before it spoils. Hunters bring venison, rabbit, or wild turkey to the tables, adding moments of abundance to otherwise plain fare. Ranchers, too, may share beef, though much of it is reserved for market rather than home consumption. Vegetables are rare. Out here, gardens are difficult to maintain, threatened by poor soil, drought, and pests. When they do grow, they provide seasonal delights: corn roasted over a fire, potatoes boiled in their skins, or squash cooked until soft. But when winter arrives, these vanish, replaced by preserved goods, if any remains. More often, the plates are bare of greenery, and bodies suffer for it. Scurvy, the sickness of sailors, appears even here. Its cause unknown to most settlers. Fruit, when found, is a treasure. An apple brought west in a wagon, a jar of preserves carried carefully across miles, or a handful of berries gathered from the land. Each bite is a burst of sweetness in a world where sugar is scarce. The cost of imported fruits. when it arrives in general stores, is staggering, often out of reach for ordinary families. A single can of peaches might cost the wages of an entire day, making it a rare indulgence rather than a regular treat. Cooking itself is an act of labor. Fire must be tended, wood gathered, and pots positioned just right over the coals. Meals are prepared slowly, with patience and care. Women often spend hours bent over stoves or open fires, stirring, kneading, and baking. The heat pressing against their faces even in the height of summer. Children help by fetching water, grinding corn, or keeping the fire alive. Every dish is made from scratch, each ingredient wrestled from the land or bought at great cost. On the trail, meals are even simpler. Cowboys on cattle drives cook from chuck wagons, the rolling kitchens of the open range. Here, the menu is reduced to its bare essentials: beans, biscuits, bacon, and coffee. Sometimes dried fruit is added, sometimes jerky, but extravagance is rare. The cook, often gruff and commanding, is both the heart and authority of the camp. A good meal after a long day in the saddle is enough to raise spirits, while a poor one can sour the mood of the entire crew. In towns, restaurants and boarding houses offer slightly more variety. Those standards are far from modern expectations. A meal might include boiled beef, stewed potatoes, bread, and weak coffee, served in simple surroundings. The food is filling but rarely refined, meant to quiet hunger rather than delight the senses. Saloons, too, sometimes serve meals, though their offerings are often little more than salted meats and stale bread. Preservation is constant work. Without refrigeration, settlers rely on smokehouses to cure meat, salt to preserve pork, and root cellars to store vegetables through the winter. Butter and milk spoil quickly, so they are consumed fresh when available. Cheese, harder and longer lasting, is more common. Every family learns to stretch supplies, to make a little last longer, and to accept the taste of food that has seen better days. Despite the hardships, food carries with it moments of comfort. A pot of stew simmering slowly fills a cabin with warmth and smell. Fresh bread, rare and precious, turns mealtime into celebration. Children tired from work smile at the sight of molasses dripped over biscuits, a sweet treat in an otherwise plain diet. These small joys make the struggle of meals more bearable, turning necessity into rituals. As the day wears on, hunger returns again and again. Lunch is little more than leftovers from breakfast: beans, bread, and perhaps a strip of jerky. Supper is heartier, often a stew that stretches the day's ingredients into something sustaining. Families gather around rough tables, the firelight flickering across their faces, bowls in hand. Conversation flows slowly, often about work done or worries yet to come, but the act of sharing a meal brings a sense of unity. At nights, when dishes are cleaned and the fire dies low, the smell of smoke lingers in the air, clinging to clothes and walls. The day ends as it began, with the knowledge that tomorrow will bring the same meals again. Yet within this repetition lies a certain comfort. Food may be plain, but it is steady, and in the Wild West, steady is often the best one can hope for. As you drift to sleep, stomach filled and fire fading, you think of how every bite eaten today was earned through labor, patience, and endurance. It is not abundance that sustains life here, but persistence. And with persistence, even the simplest meal becomes enough. The human body can endure hunger for days, but without water, survival is far shorter. On the frontier, water is life itself, yet finding it, keeping it clean, and using it wisely is one of the greatest challenges you will face. In the Wild West, thirst is a constant companion. When you wake in the morning, your first thought is not of food but of water. The bucket in your cabin is nearly empty, and so you make the familiar walk to the nearest source. It may be a stream, a shallow well, or a muddy pond. The water glimmers in the light, but beauty can be deceiving. Clear though it looks, it often carries dangers unseen, bacteria, parasites, and wastes. You dip the bucket carefully, knowing that every drop must be guarded. This water will be used not only for drinking, but for cooking, washing, and sometimes even feeding livestock. Carrying the bucket back, you feel its weight strain against your arm. Water is heavy, nearly 9 pounds for every gallon, and every family needs gallons upon gallons each day. For settlers without wells, this labor is repeated endlessly, day after day, often by women and children. The path to the water source wears smooth under constant footsteps, and in dry seasons, the worry grows heavier than the bucket itself. On the plains, drought is a relentless enemy. The land cracks under the sun, streams shrink and wells run dry. Families dig deeper, sometimes tens of feet into the earth, praying for water to seep through the soils. When none appears, desperation sets in. Wagons are abandoned, crops wither, and lives are lost to thirst. Stories abound of settlers collapsing by the roadside, their canteens empty, their lips too parched to speak. Even when water is found, purity is never assured. Livestock often drink from the same sources as people, stirring up mud and leaving behind wastes. Settlers wash clothing where they also collect drinking water, unaware of the dangers this creates. Without knowledge of germs or microbes, they cannot see that their habits spread sickness. Dysentery, cholera, and typhoid fever move swiftly through communities, carried by contaminated water. A single outbreak can fell dozens in days. In towns, the problem grows larger, with no sewage systems. Waste is thrown into the streets or collected in cesspits. When rains come, it washes into rivers and streams, the same waters drawn for cooking and drinking. The smell is strong, a mix of waste and decay, yet people grow used to it, for they have no choice. Flies swarm everywhere, another unseen hand in the spread of disease. Children are the most vulnerable, their small bodies unable to endure repeated bouts of fever and diarrhea. To cope, settlers find ways to treat their water. Though none are perfect, boiling is most common, though fuel is precious, and fires take time to build. Some add whiskey or vinegar to their drinking water, believing it makes it safer. Others strain it through cloth or let it settle, hoping the dirt sinks to the bottom. These small measures offer some help, but not enough to stop the march of illness entirely. Bathing is a luxury, not a habit. Water is too precious to waste on washing. A family may go weeks, even months, without a proper bath, relying instead on quick rinses or wiping with cloths. Children play in dirt, adults labor in sweat, and clothing absorbs it all. The smell is ever present, though no one comments, for it is shared by all. To modern eyes, this lack of hygiene seems shocking, but on the frontier it is a necessity of survival. Laundry, too, is an ordeal. Buckets are filled, water heated, and garments scrubbed by hand against washboards. Soap is scarce and costly, often made at home from lion animal fats. Women spend entire days at the riverbank, bent over wet clothing, their hands red and raw. Clean clothes are a brief relief, soon soiled again by work and dust. Despite the hardships, water holds moments of beauty. A spring bubbling cool from the ground feels like a miracle. A summer rainstorm, though feared for flooding, brings joy when barrels and cisterns are filled. Children splash in puddles, laughing, while adults breathe easier knowing their stores are replenished. Even in the harshest times, water remains a gift as much as a burden. At night, when the day's work is done, you sit near the bucket by the hearth. Its surface reflects the glow of the fire, a reminder of its preciousness. Every sip you take is measured, every drop respected. The sound of water sloshing against the wood is as familiar as the ticking of a clock, marking the rhythm of life on the frontier. And as you lie down to rest, the wind carrying the dry scent of dust through the cracks in your cabin walls, you cannot help but wonder what tomorrow will bring. Will the well still hold? Will the stream still flow? Or will the land demand another sacrifice? In the Wild West, water is never taken for granted, for it is the thread upon which survival hangs. Illness does not wait for the right time, and injury is never far in the Wild West. Life on the frontier is full of hazards, tools that cut, animals that kick, food that spoils, and water that poisons. When sickness or accident strikes, there are few defenses. For medicine in the 19th century frontier is as rough as the land itself. You wake one morning with a cough. At first it seems harmless, a scratch in your throat. But days pass and the cough deepens, rattling your chest. In the towns of the West, such a symptom brings fear. Tuberculosis, then called consumption, lingers in many families, slowly wasting its victims away. There are no antibiotics, no vaccines, only rest and hope. In crowded towns, one sick person may infect dozens more, and the sound of coughing echoes from homes and boarding houses alike. Doctors exist, but their training is uneven. Some attended medical schools, while others learned only through apprenticeships or self-study. A diploma does not guarantee skills, and in remote areas, many who call themselves doctors have no formal education at all. They carry black bags filled with instruments, scalpels, forceps, saws, but few of these tools bring comfort. Surgery is performed without proper anesthesia, with whiskey, morphines, or simply a patient's endurance as the only aids against pain. Sterilization is barely understood. Instruments are reused, unwashed between patients, and hands are seldom cleaned. A simple cut on the hand, treated poorly, may become infected, swelling until fever consumes the body. Infections that today are trivial are often fatal on the frontier. Amputation is a common solution, saws cutting through flesh and bone with grim efficiency. Many survive the operation only to perish later from infections. Common remedies often do more harm than good. Mercury is prescribed for various ailments. Its poison slowly damaging those it is meant to heal. Arsenic, too, finds its way into tonics. Bloodletting remains in practice. The belief that draining illness from the body can cure fevers and weakness. Bitter herbs, strange powders, and pungent oils are offered as cures, many of them little more than superstition. Some soothe, others sicken, and few truly heal. Midwives and mothers often take the role of healer when no doctor is near. They rely on folk knowledge, passed down through generations. Willow bark for pain, peppermint for digestion, honey for sore throats. These simple remedies are sometimes more effective than the prescriptions of doctors. Yet childbirth remains among the most dangerous moments of life. With no hospitals, no sterile instruments, and little understanding of infection, 1 in 4 women may die during delivery. Infants, too, are fragile, many not surviving their first year. Dentistry is no less grim. Tooth arches are common, caused by poor diets and lack of hygiene. Without proper tools, teeth rot and ache until the pain becomes unbearable. The cure is simple but brutal extraction. A tooth is pulled with pliers or crude forceps, without anesthesia, the patient gripping the chair until it is over. False teeth, when they exist, are expensive luxuries, carved from bone or ivory. Most settlers live with gaps in their smiles, their laughter marked by loss. Illness spreads quickly in towns and camps. Cholera, typhoid fever, and diphtheria sweep through communities, carried by water and poor sanitation. Children are most at risk, their bodies unable to withstand the fevers and dehydrations. Families bury loved ones often, and cemeteries grow faster than towns themselves. Death is an ever-present neighbor, knocking at doors without warning. Yet, despite the bleakness, there is resilience. Communities care for their sick with what little they have. Neighbors bring broth, sit at bedsides, and share herbs gathered from the land. In the absence of reliable medicines, kindness becomes its own form of treatment. Families cling to hope, praying that strength and willpower will see their loved ones through. And sometimes, against the odds, they do. Charms and superstitions also find their place. A sprig of sage hung above the door, a coin carried in the pocket, or a whispered prayer spoken before bed. These small acts bring comfort, even if they do not cure. Belief itself becomes a medicine, calming the mind if not the body. For many, the best doctor is nature itself. Rest in the open air, time spent in sunlight, or journeys to drier climates are prescribed for ailments like tuberculosis. Families move west hoping the clean air will heal their sick, though many discover that disease follows no matter how far they travel. Still, The belief in fresh air as a cure gives rise to sanatoriums where patients rest in open porches and breathe in mountain breezes. At night, as you lie in your rough bed, you think of the fragility of life here. A splinter could turn deadly, a fever could take a child, a simple fall could change a life forever. In the Wild West, survival depends as much on fortune as it does on strength. Medicine offers little certainty, and health feels like a gift that can vanish at any moment. And yet, despite the dangers people endure, they rise each morning, face their aches and illnesses, and continue with the work of living. Hope, faith, and resilience carry them where medicine cannot. And as the fire burns low, casting flickering shadows across the rooms, you are reminded of just how precious each breath truly is. Life in the Wild West is a constant test of endurance. From the moment the sun rises to the time it dips below the horizon, every man, woman, and child has tasks to complete. Work is not optional here. It is survival. Each job, no matter how humble or grueling, plays a role in keeping families alive and towns afloat. For many settlers, farming is the heart of daily life. From dawn until dusk, fields must be ploughed, seeds planted, and crops tended. Horses or oxen strain against wooden ploughs, their muscles rippling as they pull through heavy soil. Farmers walk behind, sweat running down their backs, guiding the blade through stubborn earth. The sun beats down in summer, rain lashes in storms, and in winter, frost hardens the land until tools are useless. Despite endless effort, success is never assured. Drought, pests, and blight can wipe out a season's work in days. Yet families persist, planting again and again, driven by the hope of harvest. Mining, too, draws thousands westward. The promise of gold and silver lures men into mountains and deserts, their dreams brighter than reality. In the dark mouths of mine shafts, lanterns flicker against damp walls. Miners swing pickaxes hour after hour, lungs filling with dust, backs aching from stooping. Explosions echo through tunnels as blasting powder is set, the earth trembling with each strike. Cave-ins are a constant danger, and toxic gases linger unseen. Many enter the mines seeking fortunes, but most leave with empty pockets and broken bodies. Ranching spreads across the plains, where cattle graze under endless skies. Cowboys rise before dawn, mounting horses to drive herds across miles of open land. Dust rises in thick clouds as hooves thunder, and the crack of a whip echoes in the air. Long days in the saddle leave bodies stiff and sore, but the work never ends. Calves must be branded, fences repaired, and predators driven away. In spring and fall, cattle drives stretch for weeks, cowboys sleeping under stars, cooking beans on open fires, and singing low songs to calm restless herds. It is hard work, lonely and dangerous, yet it carries a rugged pride. In towns, work takes different forms. Blacksmiths labor at forges, the ring of hammer against iron echoing through streets. Sparks fly as horseshoes are shaped, wagon wheels mended, and tools repaired. Carpenters saw and plane, raising buildings from raw timber, their hands rough from years of shaping wood. Shopkeepers arrange goods on shelves, flour, cloth, nails, and coffee, while keeping careful accounts, knowing supplies are costly and scarce. Barkeeps pour drinks in saloons, sweeping floors sticky with spilled liquor, while musicians play fiddles to lift weary spirits. Women's work, though often unseen, is constant. At home, meals must be prepared, clothes sewn and mended, and children cared for. Laundry requires hours of scrubbing at washboards, its hands raw from lye soap and cold water. Gardens are tended, livestock fed, and candles dipped by hand. Many women also take in boarders, run small shops, or assist as midwives, contributing to the survival of both family and community. Their labor, though rarely celebrated, is the backbone of frontier life. Children, too, are not spared from work. From a young age they gather firewood, carry water, and watch over animals. Boys often follow fathers into fields or workshops, while girls learn to cook, sew, and care for siblings. School, when available, is attended between chores, and lessons are often brief. Childhood is short in the Wild West, as necessity draws children quickly into the responsibilities of adulthood. Other occupations rise in response to frontier needs. Lawmen patrol dusty streets, their badges shining faintly in the sun, though their authority is limited and their risks high. Doctors and dentists offer care, though with mixed success, their skills tested daily. Teachers guide small groups of children in one-room schoolhouses, chalk squeaking against slates as lessons are taught in reading, writing, and arithmetic. Preachers gather congregations in rough wooden churches or beneath open skies, their sermons offering hope in a land of uncertainty. Not all work is lawful. Outlaws roam the countryside, stealing horses, robbing banks, or holding up stagecoaches. Some turn to crime out of desperation, others from greed. Their labor is swift and violent, leaves spent running from sheriffs and posses. Few grow old in such a trade, but their legends linger, woven into the fabric of frontier laws. Seasonal work also shapes lives. Loggers fell trees in forests, axes biting into trunks, the crash of timber shaking the ground. River workers guide rafts of logs downstream, balancing on wet, shifting wood. Railroad crews lay track across vast distances, hammering spikes beneath relentless sun, building the lines that bind east to west. These jobs are dangerous, pay is meager, yet they provide steady employment when other options fail. Despite the hardships, work brings a sense of rhythm. Days follow familiar patterns, tasks repeated again and again until they become second nature. The sound of tools, the creak of wagons, the lowing of cattle, all form a steady chorus of labor. At night exhaustion is heavy, but so is satisfaction. Work, after all, is what keeps life turning on the frontier. As you lay down after such a day, muscles aching and hands calloused, you feel the weight of labor settle into your bones. Yet there is also a quiet pride, a knowledge that through sweat and effort, another day has been endured. In the Wild West, work is more than livelihood. It is the line between survival and loss, between hope and despair. And as the stars spread across the night sky, you know that tomorrow will bring more of the same, demanding your strength, but also shaping your resilience. The West stretches wide before you, a land of distance and silence. Towns are far apart, mountains loom in the distance, and rivers carve deep valleys through the earth. To move across such a landscape requires endurance, patience, and courage. Travel here is never simple, and transportation is as much about survival as it is about reaching a destination. At dawn, you prepare your wagon for the day's journey. The wooden wheels creak as they shift under the weight of supplies. Oxen, strong but slow, strain against their yokes, their steady breaths rising in small clouds in the cool morning air. Horses stamp and snort, restless with the miles ahead. The trail is uneven, marked by ruts from countless wagons before yours. Dust clings to your skin and clothes, stirred up with every turn of the wheel. Progress is slow, often no more than 15 miles in a day, and every mile feels hard-won. For settlers heading west, wagons become both home and burden. Covered in canvas, they protect families from sun, wind, and rain, though never fully. Inside, goods are packed tightly: flour, bacon, beans, tools, and clothing. Space is so limited that people often walk beside their wagons rather than ride. Feet grow blistered, boots wear thin, and the endless horizon becomes both a promise and a trial. Stagecoaches offer another means of travel, though not a comfortable one. Painted brightly and pulled by teams of horses, they bounce along rough trails, tossing passengers side to side. Inside, space is cramped, with knees pressed against knees, the air hot and stale. Stops are brief, only long enough to water the horses and change the teams. Passengers jolt awake through the night as wheels hit rocks and ruts, their bodies sore from the constant motion. Yet for many, the stagecoach is the fastest way to cross long distances, carrying mail, money, and travelers through lands where isolation would otherwise prevail. On rivers, flatboats and steamboats carry goods and people along winding waters. The creak of timbers mixes with the steady churn of paddles, and smoke rises in thick plumes from the stacks. Steamboats bring a rare touch of comfort, with cabins, meals, and even music on board. Yet they are not without danger. Boilers sometimes explode, sending fire and debris into the air, and shallow waters can strand vessels for days. Still, river travel provides a link between towns, connecting distant places with trade and news. For those with little money, travel often means walking. Immigrants, trappers, and drifters cross the land on foot, carrying what they own on their backs. Trails wear deep beneath their steps, and nights are spent beneath the stars, wrapped in blankets against the chills. Each day brings new challenges: crossing rivers, climbing ridges, or navigating endless plains with no landmarks to guide the way. The pace is slow but steady, driven by necessity rather than comfort. By the mid-19th century, railroads begin to change everything. The whistle of an engine carries across the land, a sound as new as it is powerful. Iron tracks stretch mile after mile, linking coasts, cutting through mountains and spanning rivers with bridges of steel and timber. Trains bring speed and connections, reducing journeys of months to mere days. Passengers sit in cushioned cars, watching the landscape race by in a blur. Goods flow quickly across the country: grain, cattle, lumber, and ore, feeding towns and fueling growth. Yet even trains bring risks, with accidents, robberies, and fierce labor disputes along the lines. Travel is never without danger. Roads are little more than dirt paths, turning to mud in storms and dust in summer heat. River crossings are treacherous, wagons swept away in strong currents, families losing everything in moments. Bandits lurk along trails, watching for stagecoaches and travelers to rob. Animals, too, pose threats: snakes hidden in tall grass, wolves trailing at night, and bison herds blocking paths in great, rumbling waves. Despite hardships, journeys continue, for the frontier demands movement. Families seek new land, merchants chase trade, and miners follow rumors of gold. Soldiers ride in columns, dust rising behind them, while preachers travel from town to town with nothing but a Bible and determination. The land is vast, and so people keep moving, carving paths across mountains, plains, and deserts. At day's ends, when the wagon stops or the coach pulls into a station, travelers gather around campfires or inns. They share stories of the roads, of rivers crossed, storms weathered, and narrow escapes. Horses are watered, oxen are fed, and boots are pulled off weary feet. Sleep comes quickly, though never deeply, for tomorrow will bring more miles, more dust, and more unknowns. As you settle beneath the canvas of your wagon, or in a rough bed at a wayside inn, you hear the wind outside, rustling through the grass and trees. The journey ahead feels endless, yet each step, each turn of the wheel, carries you closer. In the Wild West, travel is never easy, but it is the thread that weaves together all lives on the frontier. It is the story of movements, of determination, of people pressing ever onward across a land too wide to conquer, but never too vast to attempt. The Wild West was not just a place of rugged landscapes and hard labor. It was a place ruled by the sky. The land stretched open, vast and exposed, with little to shield its people from the moods of nature. For settlers, farmers, and travelers, the weather was both a companion and an enemy, always present, always unpredictable. To live here meant living at the mercy of the elements. At sunrise, the air can be calm and gentle. The horizon glows in soft hues of pink and gold, and for a moment life feels still. But in the west, skies that start serene can shift in an instant. Clouds gather without warning, and a breeze becomes a gale. A day that begins with warmth and birdsong might end in a violent storm. Settlers learned quickly never to trust a clear sky. Summer brings heat that presses down like a weight. The sun bakes the earth until the soil cracks and dust rises with every step. Shade is rare, and water sources shrink to muddy pools. Farmers pray for rain as their crops wither, while ranchers drive thirsty cattle for miles in search of streams. Drought is not just uncomfortable, it is deadly. Entire harvests vanish, families face hunger, and the land itself feels hostile. When rain does come, it often comes with fury. Thunder rumbles across the plains, rolling like a drumbeat that never ends. Lightning splits the sky in brilliant, jagged flashes, striking the earth with terrifying power. Storms sweep across open ground, sheets of rain drenching everything, rivers swelling beyond their banks. Flash floods rush suddenly, carrying wagons, livestock, and even people away. One moment the land is dry, the next it is a torrent. On the plains, tornadoes spiral down from the clouds without warning. Tall columns of wind twist and churn, tearing across fields with unstoppable force. Cabins splinter, wagons overturn, and animals scatter in panics. To see such a storm approaching across flat land is to feel both awe and dread. A reminder of how small human beings are in the face of nature's strengths. Families huddle in dugouts or storm cellars, if they are lucky enough to have them, whispering prayers as the roar passes overhead. In the mountains, winter holds a different kind of peril. Snow begins softly, flakes drifting from grey skies, covering the land in silence. But storms build quickly, and soon the world is buried. Blizzards strike without mercy, winds howling through the pines, drifts piling high against doors and windows. Travelers caught on the trails may lose their way in the whiteout, the cold seeping into their bones until sleep feels too tempting to resist. Frostbite and hypothermia claim many who misjudge the weather's bite. Avalanches thunder down steep slopes, triggered by the weight of new snow or the crack of a gunshot echoing in the valley. Entire camps can vanish beneath tons of snow in seconds, leaving only silence behind. For miners and trappers, the mountains hold riches, but also risks that cannot be seen until it is too late. Spring promises renewal, but it too carries danger. Melting snow swells rivers beyond their banks. Bridges wash away, and settlements built too close to water must flee or drown. The earth softens, turning trails into swamps of sticky mud. Wagons sink, wheels snap, and oxen struggle to pull free. The season of growth also brings frustration, for every mile becomes harder to cross, every chore slower to finish. Even the wind itself is a constant companion in the West. It whistles through canyons, rattles through cracks in cabins, and lifts dust into the air until eyes burn and lungs ache. On the plains, wind drives dust storms that turn day to night. Fine grit seeps into every corner, coating food, clothes, and skins. Farmers cover their faces with cloth, children hide indoors, and still the dust finds its way in, an uninvited guest impossible to ignore. Wildfires ignite in the dry months, sparked by lightning or accident. Flames race through grasslands and forests, their heat so intense it feels alive. Settlers form desperate bucket lines, throwing water in vain against walls of fire that leap from tree to tree. Many abandon their homes, fleeing ahead of the flames with nothing but what they can carry. The smell of smoke lingers long after the fire has passed, a reminder of how quickly life can change. To live in the West is to live in rhythm with these forces. There are no forecasts, no warnings, only instinct and experience. People watch the sky, study the color of clouds, the way animals behave, the scent of the air. A sudden stillness might mean a storm. A ring around the moon might promise rains. Survival often depends on noticing the smallest signs and preparing for the worst. At night, after a day of storms or heat, there is quiet again. The wind softens, the sky fills with stars so bright they seem close enough to touch. Families sit by dim lanterns or fires, weary but alive, grateful for one more day endured. Tomorrow may bring more trials, but for now there is rest. The vastness of the land feels less like a threat and more like a lullaby, endless and steady, carrying the mind towards sleep. The West is wild not only because of its people or its stories, but because of its sky. Every storm, every drought, every flood reminds those who live here that they are guests in a land ruled by greater powers. It humbles, it frightens, but it also teaches resilience. For those who survive, each sunrise is not taken for granted. As you close your eyes, you can almost hear the low rumble of thunder far in the distance, fading slowly into the horizon. The storm passes, the land breathes again, and the stars return. In this vast and untamed place, weather shapes not just the land, but the spirit of all who call the frontier home. The Wild West glittered with promise, and much of that promise lay beneath the ground. From California's gold fields to Nevada's silver veins, the earth whispered of fortune. It lured thousands westward, farmers, drifters, immigrants, and dreamers, each hoping to strike it rich. But the reality of mining life was far from the shining nuggets of legend. It was dark, damp, dangerous, and often deadly. At dawn, miners rose from rough bunks in crowded camps. The air was cold, their bodies stiff from hard labor the day before. Breakfast was simple salt pork beans or stale bread washed down with bitter coffee. There was little time to linger. The sun had barely cleared the horizon before men shouldered their tools and trudged toward the mines. The sound of picks and shovels striking rock echoed across valleys, a steady rhythm that would last all day. For some, mining meant panning along riverbeds crouched for hours in icy water. A tin pan swirled with gravel and sand. Hands numb as cold water soaked through clothes. The glint of gold was rare, often no more than tiny flakes barely worth the efforts. Yet hope kept men kneeling by the stream, day after day, convinced that the next scoop might reveal fortune. Others labored underground, where tunnels twisted deep into mountains. Candles flickered weakly against damp rock, their light barely piercing the shadows. The air was heavy with dust and smoke, thick enough to sting lungs and eyes. Walls dripped with moisture, and the earth groaned above, as if reminding miners how fragile their safety truly was. Cave-ins were constant fears. At any moment, tons of rock could collapse without warning, burying men where they stood. Explosives added another layer of danger. Black powder or dynamite was packed into drilled holes, fuses lit by trembling hands. Miners hurried to safety, covering their ears as blasts shook the tunnels. Shards of rock rained down, and sometimes the explosions did not go as planned. A misfire could kill instantly or leave men trapped in darkness with no escape. Even without accidents, the work gnawed slowly at the bodies. Hours bent over, muscles straining with pick and hammer, wore men down. Dust filled their lungs, leading to what was called miner's consumption, what we know now as silicosis or black lung. Breathing became harder with each year, as coughs grew bloody and lives ended too soon. Others suffered mercury poisoning, used carelessly in gold processing. Its toxic effects misunderstood until it was too late. Outside the mines, the camps offered little relief. Tents and shacks crowded together. Streets muddy when it rained and dusty when it dried. Water sources were often polluted, food was scarce and overpriced, and disease spread quickly in the close quarters. Gambling halls and saloons lined the edges, promising distraction but often draining pockets faster than gold could fill them. Fights broke out, fueled by liquor and desperation, leaving the unlucky bleeding in the dirt. Still, for all the hardships, mining communities carried a strange energy. Hope kept spirits alive. Around evening fires, men spoke of rich strikes rumored in distant valleys, of nuggets pulled from streams, of veins of silver glittering just beyond the next ridge. Songs echoed through camps, simple tunes carried by tired voices. Some found camaraderie in the shared struggle, bonds formed from long hours and near escapes. For a few, fortune did come. A well-placed claim could transform a miner from pauper to wealthy man overnight. Newspapers spread tales of lucky strikes, fueling the dreams of thousands more. But for every success, countless others toiled for nothing, their lives consumed by labor that yielded little more than dust and exhaustion. Many left empty-handed, bones weary, pockets lighter than when they had arrived. Women, too, played roles in mining towns, though rarely in the shafts themselves. Some cooked meals or ran boarding houses, charging miners dearly for hot food and a bed. Others washed clothes, sewed garments, or worked as entertainers in the saloons. Their lives were no less demanding, and often no less dangerous, in places where law and order were fragile at best. Children were not spared either. Boys as young as 10 carried loads of ore, fetched water, or crawled through narrow shafts too small for grown men. Childhood in a mining camp was short, replaced quickly by labor and survival. Few lived long enough to see old age. As night settled, miners returned from the tunnels, faces black with soot and dust, bodies aching. They gathered in the dim glow of campfires, bowls of beans balanced on their knees, their laughter and songs carrying faintly into the night air. Above them, the stars shone bright, indifferent to the toil below. Some dreamed of tomorrow's work bringing wealth. Others simply prayed to survive another day. For those who lived through it, mining in the Wild West was never truly about gold or silver. It was about endurance, about chasing hope in a place that offered little mercy. The earth demanded everything: sweat, strength, sometimes even life itself. And though most walked away without riches, they carried the memory of those dark tunnels, the echo of picks against stone, and the endless dream of striking it rich just beyond the next horizon. Tonight, as you rest, you can imagine that distant rhythm, the steady clang of metal on rock, echoing faintly in the depths of the earth. A sound both hopeful and haunting, a lullaby of labor that defines so many lives in the frontier's shadowed hearts. The sun sinks slowly behind the horizon, painting the vast western sky in shades of orange, purple, and deepening blues. Shadows stretch long across the plains, and the air cools as the day gives way to night. For a moment there is peace. The noise of work fades, wagons settle, and voices grow softer. Yet in the Wild West, nightfall is never simply a time of rest. It is a time of vulnerability, when dangers shift from the harshness of the day to the unseen perils of darkness. Inside cabins, candles are lit, their glow warm but faint. Oil lamps flicker, casting long shadows across wooden walls. Families huddle close not only for light but for comfort. Firewood is stacked, and small flames crackle in stone hearths, though always with caution. Fire is a constant fear. A single spark from a tipped candle or a chimney left unattended can consume an entire home within minutes. In towns, whole blocks have vanished to flame, the night sky glowing red as people scramble to save what little they can. Outside, the world feels different once the sun is gone. The same open spaces that seemed vast by day now feel endless, mysterious, and threatening. Coyotes call in the distance, their howls rising and falling on the wind. Horses shift uneasily in corrals, ears twitching at unseen movements. Wolves may linger at the edge of campfires, their eyes glinting faintly, waiting for an unwary animal or traveler to stray. Snakes and scorpions, too, emerge in the coolness, slithering or creeping silently in the dark. For travelers, night is especially dangerous. Roads vanish into shadows, and trails are nearly impossible to follow. Without lanterns or moonlight, even a short journey becomes treacherous. Wagons risk overturning. Riders risk breaking bones, and straying too far from camp could mean becoming lost in the wilderness. Bandits often take advantage of the cover of night, ambushing lone riders or small groups. A campfire might provide warmth, but it also reveals your location to eyes that may not be friendly. In towns, the dangers are of a different kind. As the day's work ends, saloons come alive. Their doors swing open, spilling laughter, shouting, and the sound of boots clattering across wooden floors. Inside, men drink raw liquor by the glass, their tempers loosening with every swallow. Arguments spark easily, fueled by frustration, greed, or insult. Fists fly, knives flash, and sometimes guns are drawn. Few conflicts are planned, most are sudden. Messy bursts of violence that leave the unlucky wounded or dead before morning. Lawmen do their best, but sheriffs and marshals are few, and their authority stretches thin. A single officer might be responsible for an entire town and miles beyond. When trouble comes after dark, it often falls to local vigilantes or even neighbors to keep order. Some towns impose curfews, ringing bells to signal that citizens should be indoors, but not every place is so organized. For many, the night brings unease, a sense that safety is never certain once daylight fades. For women, the risks of night are sharper still. Many work in boarding houses, kitchens or saloons, often forced to walk home under cover of darkness. Alone on empty streets, they move quickly, heads down, hoping to avoid notice. Lamps burn in windows to guide them, but shadows still stretch across alleys and doorways. Fear is a constant companion. Despite the dangers, nightfall also carries beauty. Away from the noise of saloons and the flicker of fires, the wilderness opens itself to the sky. With no city lights to dim them, stars blaze brilliantly overhead. Countless points of silver against the velvet dark. The Milky Way arches high, so clear it seems like a painted ribbon across the heavens. Travelers lie on their blankets and stare upward, their worries softening as the universe stretches endlessly above. The stillness of the frontier night, broken only by the hum of insects or the distant cry of an owl, has a way of calming even the most burdened heart. In mining camps and ranch houses, music sometimes floats into the night. A fiddle, a harmonica, or a soft human voice carries across the cool air. Songs tell of home, of longing, of dreams not yet fulfilled. Around campfires, stories are shared. Tales of narrow escapes, of legendary outlaws, or of the hope that tomorrow's work will bring better fortunes. Laughter rises briefly, then fades into quiet as fatigue settles on tired shoulders. As the hours stretch on, lamps are extinguished one by one. Town streets fall silent, except for the occasional bark of a dog or the creak of a swinging sign in the breeze. Cabins grow still, save for the soft sound of breathing or the occasional cough. Even saloons eventually dim, though their floors remain sticky with spilled liquor and their corners echo faintly with the memory of songs and arguments. Sleep in the West is rarely deep. There is always an ear half awake, listening for hoofbeats, for the sound of intruders, or for storms that might sweep in without warning. Yet sleep is essential, for tomorrow brings more labor, more miles, and more uncertainties. On a lumpy mattress, a bed of straw, or even the bare ground, weary bodies surrender at last to rest. The night holds its breath until dawn. As the stars fade slowly, the horizon lightens and the sounds of life return. Roosters crow, horses snort, and fires crackle back to life. Another day has begun, and with it the endless cycle of work and survival. But in that fragile space between night and morning, the Wild West reveals both its harshness and its beauty, a land where danger and wonder walk hand in hand, where rest is never guaranteed, yet always deeply cherished. The Wild West tested more than bodies, it tested minds. The endless horizon, the constant struggle for survival, the unrelenting uncertainty, all weighed heavily on those who sought to build a life in the frontier. To live in the West was to balance hope with hardship, courage with fear, and dreams with disappointment. Over time, the burden of such a life left marks not easily seen but deeply felt. Loneliness was perhaps the most common companion. Vast distances separated towns and homesteads, and neighbors might live miles away. For a farmer working sunup to sundown, weeks could pass without speaking to anyone outside of family. Travelers along dusty trails often rode for days without crossing another soul. In the silence of endless plains or the shadow of mountains, the mind sometimes wandered into dark places. Letters from home brought comforts, but they arrived slowly, carried across dangerous routes, and often contained more longing than reassurance. Fear lingered as well. Every day carried risk, of accidents, of illness, of attack, of loss. A child's cough could worsen into pneumonia without warnings. A wagon wheel could break far from help. A sudden storm could ruin crops or flood homes. The unpredictability of life gnawed at nerves. Sleep rarely came easy, as minds rehearsed worst-case scenarios, replaying them in the dark. The strain was sharpest in women, many of whom found themselves isolated on farms or in cabins while husbands worked long hours away. Some wrote in journals about the silence pressing in, broken only by the wind or the cry of animals. Others described exhaustion, tending children, cooking, sewing, and nursing with little rest or relief. Depression, though it had no name then, was a frequent shadow. Some endured with quiet resilience, others did not survive the crushing solitude. Men carried their own burdens. Pride and expectation pushed them to succeed, to carve a living from the unforgiving land. When efforts failed, when crops withered, cattle died, or mines produced nothing, the weight of disappointment grew heavy. Many drowned their despair in whiskies, seeking escape in the saloons that glowed each evening. For some, violence became an outlet, a way to release what could not be spoken. Violence itself left scars. Soldiers who fought in wars carried memories of battle into their new lives, haunted by what they had seen. Settlers who clashed with native tribes, or towns torn apart by outlaw raids, bore invisible wounds. Trauma was seldom understood, let alone treated. Men and women alike simply carried it, often in silence, masking it beneath the daily labor of survival. Children were not untouched. Many grew up faster than their years, working alongside adults, witnessing hardships too heavy for young shoulders. Some thrived under the responsibility, hardened into resilience. Others carried forward the quiet sadness of a childhood shaped by struggles. In their drawings, their stories, or their restless sleep, the weight of frontier life revealed itself. Yet, for all its tolls, the frontier also revealed a strength of spirit. Communities formed bonds out of necessity, neighbors leaning on one another during droughts, storms, or sickness. Churches and schools became places of gathering where people found solace in shared songs and stories. Festivals, dances, and simple meals together offered brief escapes from worry. Even small joys, a new calf, a letter from home, a night of laughter, helped balance the scales against despair. The human mind, though strained, adapted in remarkable ways. Settlers found purpose in hard work, meaning in family, and pride in survival itself. Some kept diaries, writing not just their hardships but also their hopes, their gratitude for small blessings, their wonder at sunsets and starlit skies. These words, preserved through time, reveal that even in struggle, beauty was not forgotten. Still, the toll was undeniable. Grave markers across the West testify not only to lives cut short by violence or disease, but also to those who could no longer carry the weight of loneliness or despair. The stories we tell of courage and adventure are only part of the truth. The silent battles of the mind, fought each day in cabins, camps, and towns, were equally part of the West's history. As night deepens, imagine the weary settler lying on a straw mattress, staring at the low ceiling, thoughts heavy with worry, or the lone traveler by his campfire, gazing into flames, hearing only the whisper of the wind. Their struggles are long past, but their echoes remain. The Wild West was not just a test of endurance against nature, but a test of resilience within the human heart. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you may feel a touch of that same quiet. The vastness of their world, the silence of the plains, the weight of uncertainty, all softened now into memory. And with that memory comes a reminder, even in the harshest places, the human spirit sought light, found companionship, and dreamed of tomorrow. The Wild West lives in our imagination as a land of legends. Cowboys and sheriffs, outlaws and gold strikes, endless plains beneath vast skies. But as you have seen, the reality was harsher, quieter, and far more human. It was a world built on endurance of bodies, of minds, of communities, where each sunrise carried both promise and perils. Life on the frontier demanded everything. Days were filled with labor, plowing fields, herding cattle, digging mines, repairing wagons. Nights carried their own challenges, loneliness, danger, the weight of silence stretching across the open land. Storms swept in without warnings, and the ground itself could turn against those who tried to tame it. Illness, hunger, and violence were never far away. And yet, people came and stayed and built lives in this demanding place. Their struggles shaped the land as much as the land shaped them. In cabins of rough, hewn timber, families shared meals of beans and bread, their laughter softening the day's weariness. In dusty towns, music from a fiddle lifted spirits, if only for an evening. On the trails, travelers huddled by campfires, their eyes lifted to the same stars that shine above us now. Through hardship, they found meaning in small joys, resilience in one another, and hope in the belief that tomorrow might be better. The Wild West was not just hardship, it was also beauty. The sweep of golden prairies beneath sunrise, the hush of forests at dusk, the sparkle of rivers running cold and clear through mountain valleys, the quiet majesty of a night sky, scattered with more stars than one could count. For every danger, there was also wonder, for every trial, a reminder of the world's vastness and mystery. In reflecting on their lives, we glimpse truths that extend beyond their times. We see how resilience grows from challenge, how companionship softens isolation, how hope endures even in the face of despair. These lessons, born in the dust and silence of the frontier, continue to echo today. Now, as you lie in rest, imagine the quiet at the end of a frontier day. The sun has set, the fires are glowing faintly, and the sounds of labor have faded. Horses shift softly in their corrals. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote's call rises and falls, then disappears into stillness. A family drifts into slumber in their cabins. A traveler closes his eyes beside fading embers, and a town grows hushed under the blanket of night. Their world, filled with struggle and endurance, belongs to history now. Yet in these moments of calm reflection, it becomes close enough to touch. You can almost feel the cool night air, hear the quiet creak of wood in a cabin, and see the endless sky stretching above. The Wild West was a place where survival was never guaranteed, but where the human spirit persisted, where dreams endured, and where life, fragile, fleeting, and precious, carried on. And so, with their story told, we, too, can set it gently aside. Let the echoes of their world fade into silence. Let the weight of their struggles soften into memory, and let yourself drift, carried by the calm rhythm of their lives, into your own night of rest. The fires burn low, the stars shine bright, and the Wild West sleeps,